darkness of the distant past, there was only war. Well, there were also castles and people and towns and trade and trains and stations and ships and people and wonders and horrors and everything in between, but we aren't going to be talking about that. Today, we are going to be talking about battles. We've touched upon battles in other videos, but I haven't really spoken about battles as a subject. Mainly because I'm not a military historian, and military historians have a bit of a reputation.
The library's got a lot of books. I like the ones about history.
But today we are going to talk about a set of lesser known battles in and around the Lothians. Ones that are lesser known, as is the way of this channel. So come with me as we talk about the battles of the Lothians. Okay, so imagine this. The king, in this case King James IV, has died at the Battle of Lothian. By the way, this is the same king who placed 2 babies and a mute woman on Inchkeith to find out what the first language was. Anyways, this leaves his infant son, also called James, on the throne, ready to have some advisors who would basically run the country in his stead until adulthood, who could, you know, get nice and wealthy in the process. Well, after King James IV's wife Margaret remarried to Archibald Douglas, 6th Earl of Angus, James V's new stepfather basically held the king hostage and ruled on his behalf, whilst Margaret tried to escape with the king on multiple occasions. One of those attempts led to the Battle of Linlithgow Bridge. So Margaret convinced John Stuart, 3rd Earl of Lennox, and Cardinal Beaton to side with her in this power struggle, and John Stuart gathered an army of 10,000 to march on Edinburgh from Stirling. Meanwhile, Archie Douglas mustered a massive army of 2,500 by mustering the people of Linlithgow and the surrounding area. Archie Boyd decided to place his troops on Pace Hill, overlooking Linlithgow and the Avon. This meant Johnny Boy had to rethink his plans, which he did when he found a ford a mile down the stream at Manuel, so he could outflank Archie and his forces before they could call up reinforcements, which he did manage to do, until the reinforcements came and Johnny Boy's army was defeated and Johnny himself was killed. So James remained under his stepfather's thumb until he was 16 and fled to Edinburgh to assume his position as king. He got his own back at his stepdad by confiscating his lands and forcing his father and his family to flee to England. So Chucky I really stepped in it when he decided to change the liturgy of the Church of Scotland. The effects of this decision echo down the ages to this day. Hopefully Chucky III won't make a similar mistake, even though there's a literal play and TV movie about him doing just that. Anyway, if you think the whole thing with the Covenanters ended when Chucky II came to the throne, you'd be so wrong. So it all started with this little thing called the Pentland Uprising, which was a reaction to the restoration of Episcopalianism in the Church of Scotland. For those not familiar with the term, it means that bishops were reintroduced into the Church of Scotland, whereas the Covenanters were Presbyterian, meaning that they were against bishops and more in favour of a more parliamentary form of government. So a group of 900 men went to Lanark to renew the Solemn League in Covenant, a document that swore to uphold the Reformed, aka Presbyterian religion, in Scotland, and marched to Edinburgh to scream at the king about it. The king's forces heard about this and were all, fuck that, and went down to meet them at William Green in the Pentlands, just under 3 kilometres from Pennacook. So you had 900 lightly armed men with 3,000 armed and trained men. Long story short, the king's army won. The actual casualties were surprisingly light, with 50 killed and 80 taken prisoner, and the rest escaping into the darkness. However, those captured were also, well, tortured, and 36 of them were executed. At Ayr and Irvine, the official hangman refused to carry out the hanging. At Ayr, however, this problem was solved by offering one of the condemned their freedom if he would carry out the hanging. And, Jesus Christ, what imagine being all, I'm willing to die for the Reformation, and then turning on your comrades at the gallows. Just wow. Apparently they executed people, except for that one guy who won his freedom by carrying out the execution. Seriously, fuck you, Kyle. I bet his name was Kyle. We're so calm in the face of death, except for Kyle, that they actually inspired people and were seen as martyrs rather than traitors. The king's soldiers didn't see it this way and decided to persecute the friends and family of the executed martyrs. So this is not an obscure battle. Not at all. Because, well, this was one of the most pivotal battles of the 45. There's a reason why I'm doing this battle though. Firstly, as a follow-up to the section on the Waterloo video where I spoke about the Coltbridge Canter, and secondly because I think this battle might have been the first battle to involve a railway, if you call the Tranent to Kilkenzie Wagonway a railway, which I do. Anyway, the Battle of Prestonpans has also been known as the Battle of Gladsmuir and the Battle of Tranent, but is known today as the Battle of Prestonpans. Now, during the Jacobite Rebellion, you also had the War of the Austrian Succession, and because of this, a lot of the government troops were away in Europe fighting in Flanders. This left Cope, the commander in Scotland, to deal with the rebellion which had captured Edinburgh after its poorly trained garrison, in my words, shot themselves and ran away. He ordered his troops to move west, and Charlie ordered his troops to move east, and they met at the Wagonway. The government forces were, weirdly, on the west side, and the Jacobites were on the east. What seemed to have won the battle was the inexperience of the troops on the government side and the Highland charge which led the rather green troops to flee in terror. One of the commanders, James Gardiner, was wounded in battle and later died in Tranent. Interestingly enough, Stuart of Invernahyle won a pardon after Culloden because he spared the life of Lieutenant Colonel Whiteford. As we all know, the Jacobite rebellion failed, and today Scotland remains part of the United Kingdom. For now.